everybody! Recently, I did a video on Oregon Ballot Measure 118. And that was mainly, actually there's multiple reasons for it, but mainly because of the fact that that was the only ballot measure I have seen all year. I thought that was really weird. So I asked my friend Sean recently when he was over if he had heard anything about any other ballot measures, because I had only heard anything about 118 and I hadn't seen or heard a damn thing about any of the others. And of course with 118, we literally just have like one short paragraph about what it's supposedly for, and that's it. Nobody even knows, not even my friend understands who the hell the sponsors are of it, who's behind it. It's there's some other people here that vote here in Oregon I'm friends with that have also said the same thing, like, who the hell are the sponsors? I'm like, well, it's a damn good question, isn't it? This is typical Oregon actions, basically, when it comes down to ballot measures. They just don't give you any details at all. They're just like, nah, here's the surface value, here's a title, and here's this 1 or 2 sentence description of it, and that's all you get. Now vote. And it's just like, fuck off. They don't try to give you they appear to give you the bare minimum. They don't want to give you anything else. Measure 118 is one I definitely want to look into to see what the hell it actually says. If a yes vote, it's supporting the increase on corporate minimum tax on sales exceeding 25 million by 3%, removing the minimum tax cap, and distributing increased revenue to Oregon residents who spend more than 200 days in the state. The 200 days number is such a random, arbitrary thing. And again, this still doesn't make it clear. It adds the extra detail of removing the minimum tax cap. That's new. I haven't seen or heard anything about that. Corporations pay either the corporate income tax or the minimum tax. Of course, it's whichever is higher. The state's looking to profit. What the fuck is the minimum tax? Is it I don't understand. I can't wrap my tiny little brain around that. That doesn't make any sense. Measure 118 would decrease it on corporations with Oregon sales by enacting a 3% tax on sales greater than 25 million in addition to the minimum tax already required by law. The initiative would authorize the Department of Revenue to distribute additional revenue from corporate sales tax equally to, okay, so every year. That's one of the details I asked about in my video, because nobody that I've talked to that's seen anything about it, that knows it, that knew anything more than me, including about other ballot measures, knew even if it was like, if it was supposed to be yearly, if it was supposed to be a one-time thing, which if it's a one-time thing, this is absolutely fucking pointless. And also the advertising claim both in favor and against it is $1,600. So it'd be $1,600 a year to every resident. An eligible resident would need to reside in the state for 200 days of the eligibility year. So this still says every eligible resident, or every resident of 200 days or more, which is the only eligibility apparently it's the only eligibility thing to clear, which is just bizarre, because why the heck would you do this and then say, oh, by the way, here, Phil Knight, have $1,600 a year from the tax that we literally took from you and your businesses anyway? Why do, or Scarlett Johansson, because Scarlett Johansson actually is a Oregonian. She's from Scappoose. I think she still owns a home up in the hills up there. Why do that? It doesn't make any sense. The claim is supposedly for the benefit of people like myself or my mom who are in poverty. So basically, they just say middle class. It should be lower middle class and below. Get the $1,600 a month or whatever. And everybody above that probably shouldn't. Or I guess in the rest of the middle class bracket, you could theorize you could shrink it to like $900 a year or something. And then the rest of everybody else can go fuck themselves. Personally, I think that would make a lot more sense. Rather than just, here, Phil Knight, you also get $1,600 from the taxes that we took out of your business expenses, and now we're giving it in reimbursement back to you. How does that make sense? I suppose it would incentivize them not to fight it as hard, but still. By the way, I've seen the majority of people oppose it, including the progressives. A lot of people here that are progressive, or call themselves that at least, they are against 118 as well. This is because it's not just for actual corporations. They claim it is, but it's not. It's for any company that makes that much or above. Meaning that if you're a small business, you're just as liable to pay this tax. You're fucked. So, which is terrible. That's not a good way to support a small mom and pop local business. It just doesn't, it doesn't work well. It's ironic because this is coming out around the exact same time as Sherry's went out of business, which is a long-standing local joint here in local chain here in Oregon. And I think they also, I heard that they have like randomly, I think they have a location like Nebraska, and then like they had, I think, a handful in Texas and like one other random state that's isolated from the Northwest, but they're an Oregon company. So they're technically regional local, but they had, it's weird. But like true local slash regional, you know, small companies, that's bad. Because like think about when you're just starting your company, you finally get to the success point where you're making, say that you have your first year, you just made 25 million. Now you have to pay this big ass tax on top of your taxes you already are paying. That's going to make it a lot more challenging to get past that hurdle. You just got to it, you passed all the other hurdles, you think, oh, you're home free, and then you run headfirst into this hurdle, and it's just like, oh, fuck me. It's a terrible idea. There needs to be a limitation on what businesses are going to experience that, I think. But then I guess that would make it even more difficult to differentiate and define. But I was going to say Alaska has something similar, except it's not really that similar because it's out of their gas extraction industry. It's not even a tax. Actually, it's a rebate. You get a rebate check of $1,200 every fucking year because that's a cut out of the state's revenue from their oil extraction. So that's not really actually, see, that's not fucking comparable. So that's stupid that they're like, oh, well, you know, it's similar. It's really not. The certified ballot title is as follows: increases highest corporate minimum taxes, distributes revenue to eligible individuals, state replaces reduced federal benefits. Here's something here. Increases highest corporate minimum taxes. I kind of wanted to point this out for a while. That's still vague. It might occur as being really picky, OCD, nitpicky to you, but I think this is something that needs to be nitpicked. You need to be very clear, direct, and concise without beating around the bush, as all politics does. That's all they ever do. And actually be direct, clear, and concise exactly what you are saying. Because this could go, you could understand this as two different ways, two different meanings entirely. Increases the highest corporate minimum taxes. So A, increase the amount, the highest amount that they can tax them, or increasing the minimum, meaning that, in other words, the minimum is going to be in a higher number, meaning that the minimum that's a smaller number now, say, will suddenly it'll be a higher threshold to hit and to cross before somebody's taxable. Those are the two different ways you can interpret that, which is very bad for something like this to be that unclear. And I guarantee, because it's politics, it's very intentional. It's intentionally designed to be vague or confusing. Something that is debated because they don't want to be clear. They'd rather, the less clear they are, the more likely you are to actually support it. That's the irony of political psychology, unfortunately. Current law requires corporations to pay higher of either, should we say, of the higher, I would think, of either tax on taxable income or corporate minimum tax. Except S corporations, whatever that is supposed to be. Minimum tax amount determined by tax bracket based on corporations' Oregon sales. I feel like this is like not grammatically correct, any of this shit. Because that's why I'm stumbling, because like this doesn't flow correctly. Minimum tax capped at $100,000 for 100 million or more in sales. That's not that bad. But again, I'm wondering if they're actually being, this isn't as clear as it seems. Beginning in 2025, measure removes minimum tax cap. Increases minimum tax on all corporations. Did I ask? Let them die. To all corporations with Oregon sales exceeding $25 million. By imposing an additional tax of 3% for sales above 25 million. Measure directs Department of Revenue to equally distribute increased revenue to all individuals residing more than 200. It's exhaustive. It's actually not that exhaustive. I'm just lazy. I don't really care that much. Yeah, here you go. Here's the opponents. Governor Kotek, I'm opposed to this ballot measure. It may look good on paper, but it's flawed approach would punch a huge hole in the state budget and put essential services for low wage and working families at risk. Shaky at best for that, in my opinion. Supporters. Basically nobody. That is actually incredible. Oregon Progressive Party, Progressive Pacific Green Party, Teamsters Local 206, Progressive Democrats of America. Oh my goodness. That is hilarious. And then everybody's against it. The officials. It's all fucking Dems except for one Republican here, Lori Chavez. Oregon Association of Nurseries. Yeah, that makes sense actually, because it's nurseries, so you're not going to make that much money. If you just, in fact, they probably average somewhere around that amount of like 25 million a year. So that would have definitely hurt a lot. That is so interesting. Yep, OLCV. I'm actually surprised to see them there. And Western States Petroleum. Well, you don't say. This is ironic though, because Oregon has had, I think it's in our constitution actually. I'm pretty sure it's in our state constitution that it's illegal to do anything related to mining of petroleum. You just can't do it. So if you start digging in your land and you accidentally hit black gold, you actually are probably going to get a major fucking criminal charge for it in the state. It's actually kind of insane. But that's, so this is just weird to me because like even if they're operating in Oregon, they have no foothold. So that's just bizarre. Yeah, so basically nobody supports it and everybody's against it. That's fucking adorable. Yeah, obviously it sounds like this is, since money is really the true determiner of what gets approved or not, I would say that this is a guarantee that 118 won't get passed. It says surplus specifically, though. If it really was surplus, then I don't see a problem of it taking a hit on revenue. Especially how tax happy this fucking state is, including also permit happy. Like, we already pay for taxes for our public lands, including state parks, and yet we have to pay to fucking access them now. And they're trying to jack up the price on that, and then they're trying to toll everything, and it's just like, fuck you. Beginning in 2028. I guess because it includes federal, but damn. How would Measure 117 change Oregon's electoral system? The ballot measure would establish ranked choice voting for elections to federal and state offices, including the president, U.S. senator, U.S. representative, governor, secretary of state, attorney general, state treasurer, and commissioner of labor and industries. Currently, Oregon uses a plurality voting system in which the candidate with the highest number of votes wins. The ballot measure would not affect state legislative elections, which would continue to use plurality voting. The law would also authorize cities, counties, school districts, and other local governments and local districts to use ranked choice voting for local elections unless home rule charters preempt it. The law would also require the Secretary of State to establish a program to educate voters about ranked choice. The law would take effect on January 1st, 2028, if it is approved by voters. 3 local jurisdictions, Benton, Multnomah, and Portland, have adopted ranked choice voting. So 1 municipality, 2 counties. Equal Vote Coalition and Oregon Association of County Clerks registered in opposition to the measure during the legislative process. Sarah Wolk, executive director of the Equal Vote Coalition, says, I'm blank quote, ranked choice voting ignores most voters' rankings, so it can eliminate a candidate who was actually preferred overall. It's not how that works, though. This happened in 2022's Alaska special election, where despite claims that the problem had been solved, the election was spoiled by Sarah Palin. Flipping the seat blue rather than electing the moderate Republican who was preferred over all others, according to the ballots cast. For Palin voters, ranking her first choice actually backfired and ironically helped elect their last choice instead. That doesn't make any sense, though. And, well, I guess it could make sense, yeah, because it's balancing it out. So basically, in other words, even if it was most people's last. Well, no, I guess does that make sense? I guess no, it still doesn't make sense because if the majority actually did put her as their last candidate, like their last rank, then that would mean that obviously the majority doesn't want her. So even if the minority, and let's say it's like 30% of votes in Alaska, had her first, and that ignores that you could have her out of like say 5 different candidates, you have her, nobody has her second, third, or fourth in the ranks. That still would not. I guess no, and theoretically you could still actually win at that point if that was the case. Yeah, no, I guess that does kind of suck. But that's the thing, is that like this is why I've said this so many times before, is that the very reason why, or the very basis and reason and foundation why democracy is so great and what makes it the best is also what causes it to basically implode on itself and commit suicide. It is the very same reason why it's so good is why it's actually extremely terrible and a horrible thing and shouldn't be supported. It's the weirdest fucking thing because majority rule. That's a huge problem though, because then everybody else in the minority gets fucked over. And only this majority fucking controls everything. And that's a major fucking problem. And this is still kind of a democratic issue, a democracy issue, because it proves that no matter what you do, there's going to be too many imperfections that'll just piss too many people off. Or it's just like, this is a bad idea for this reason. And yeah, actually that would suck. If the majority still puts somebody last place, but they can still end up being elected anyway, because the majority, the rest of the people actually didn't have her last, or this candidate last, again, in this example would be Sarah Palin, last, but rather they had her in second or third or first choice, again, just as an example, if there was only 5 people that you could rank with. And so she still could win, despite the fact that the majority put her last out of the 5. Yeah, that's a problem with democracy, isn't it? Because you can't win. Like, at that point, it's like, really? So the majority could actually vote for somebody else and collectively have them. 55% of voters could have, 60% of voters could have somebody ranked first. But that person could still lose to the person who's ranked last. And that just seems like I could see major arguments against that and huge issues. So I get that. Except in their case, they're saying not first or last. They're saying that she was first in majority. How true that is, who the hell knows? 2 states have adopted and implemented it at the state level via ballot measure. Maine was the first state to adopt it in 2016. Alaska was the second state in 2020. In 2022, Nevada voters approved a RCV initiative that needs to be approved again in 2024 to take effect. I understand why you would do that, and it does make sense, but at the same time, I could also see how it doesn't make sense. So, I don't. A redundancy, I guess, just to see, I guess, 2 years later, like, do you still feel the same way? No. If not, then obviously they'll turn it down, and then it won't go into effect, and they'll just have to restart from scratch. That redundancy is actually probably a good thing, because it shows, it allows people's time for stew kind of simmer in the background while people forget about it and move on with their lives. And then you come back to it later, and then there's a chance that it completely shifted and changed. That's very common. So actually, that's overall a better idea than not to do, but it's still, I would think it would be annoying more than anything. 5 states had enacted legislation banning the use of ranked choice voting in statewide or local elections. Banned it. Interesting. The ballot measure would establish ranked choice voting for elections to federal and state offices, including the president, resident dep, as you will, U.S. senator, U.S. representative, governor, state secretary of state, attorney general, state treasurer, and commissioner of labor and industries. A ranked choice voting system is an electoral system in which voters rank candidates by preference on their ballots. If a candidate wins a majority of first preference votes, he or she is declared the winner. If no candidate wins a majority of first preference votes, the candidate with the fewest first preference votes is eliminated. First Preference votes cast for the failed candidate are eliminated, and counting the next preference choice indicated on those ballots. A new tally is conducted to determine whether any candidate has won a majority of the adjusted votes. The process is repeated until a candidate wins an outright majority. I don't see how that would make any sense, though, because you would think you would do that math ahead of time. So you'd already know the percentage of the people who had voted in favor, or, had ranked. You already know the percentage of people who had ranked each of the candidates in a certain in each ranking. Therefore, you would already know this ahead of time. Why would you need to go through this weird process of elimination before you can finally see, oh, and here's where they all realign? You don't have to realign them, I wouldn't think. I'm not good with numbers. My brain is horrible with math, but like I think that makes sense to see it that way. But maybe I'm missing an extra step of why that would make sense, that you would have to do that, but I don't think that's true because you already have the percentages, but whatever. For elections that use ranked choice voting to elect multiple candidates to a single office, the law would require the Secretary of State to adopt by rule a proportional methodology. The law would also authorize cities, counties, school districts, other local governments, and local districts to use ranked choice voting for local elections unless home rule charters preempt it. The law would also require the Secretary of State to establish a program to educate voters about ranked choice voting. The law also states that if the National Popular Vote Interstate Compact, didn't even know that existed, which Oregon is a part of, takes effect, the state would report the winner of the final tabulation round to the compact. However, if the winner of the final tabulation is different from the winner of the national popular vote, Oregon would be required to elect electors for the candidate who won the national popular vote in accordance with the compact. That is extremely stupid. So hopefully Oregon pulls out of that if this goes through. Because otherwise, then what's the point of doing that? There's no point to do that. At least not include the national level for presidency. Supporters, which is pretty much everyone, apparently. Mayor of Corvallis just randomly won mayor. Mayor of Corvallis. Corvallis City Council. I mean, if the mayor is saying he's in favor of it and endorsing it, then yeah, probably his underlings are going to do the same thing. Or American Civil Liberties Union, which is pretty much a joke these days, but give her hell. American Pacific Asian Corporation is what she wants to say. Yeah, close enough. Of Oregon. Opposition is much smaller. All Republicans except for non-partisan. I'm assuming that means she's independent. Oh, fuck it. I want to see the opposition argument. Ranked choice voting ultimately disconnects voters from issues and allows fringe candidates to win elections. Interesting, a Republican saying that, because the first thing I think of at that point is like, because the way obviously there's animosity in it when he says fringe candidates, like, how dare you, fringe. It reminds me of fucking wet slimp sock puppet up there in Canada and Trudeau being like, these people are usually racist and extremely sexist people. They are members of a small fringe minority with unacceptable views. I'm a proud member of that community, by the way. I have no shame in saying that. Actually, I get joy out of it because I just find it hilarious that he thought it's like, they're really going to hurt after I give them this whiz of a burn. It's like, actually, you gave us more unity than you did anything by saying that, Trudy. But all right. We cannot afford to join the handful of states replacing traditional elections with the obtuse deconstruction of political accountability. Yet there's no accountability now. There's no transparency now. There's tons of election fraud on both sides of the fence. Like, it's so stupid. It's actually very hypocritical of a Republican to say such a thing. Moreover, the principle of simplicity also needs to be a part of the voting process itself. Today, too many Oregonians are intimidated by the length of their ballot and do not understand the meaning of all the races and ballot measures. The reason why is not because they're intimidated by the length. It's because there's no length at all. When they advertise and start pointing out, like, here's a ballot measure, does the state or the media ever give you the fucking link to something like this Ballotpedia website? No. Do they give you the link to the state itself in its own government website, Oregon.gov, in the actual legislative texts? No. They don't do that at all. All they give you is literally the fucking title, and that's it. What you see is this shit. Just the most basic shit of what's in the title. Oh, it's ranked choice voting. Great. Sounds good to me. And this is all you fucking get. That's all. You can get a paragraph or two worth of advertising in favor of it for buzzwords, and that's it. And now impulsively vote, like Oregonians always do. So, no. Nobody's intimidated by it because they don't fucking see it. Because you don't want them to see it. You just want them to impulsively vote. So, fuck off. Plus, 4 pages, or in this case, 11, but you can see the spacing and the size of the text. How can you be intimidated by this? This isn't like federal legislation that's averages 594 pages in length. Like, this is, and actually is full of fine print, so it's actually tiny, and the formatting is way closer together. There's not as much spacing. Fuck off. Fuck off. This is the longest one of them all so far. 11 pages, and you see how fucking minute that is. Even in its fragmented state, look at this. That's 1 page of 11. Intimidated. Fuck off. Werner, fuck off. Go back to Robbins. Only Pennsylvanians will understand that joke. Actually, they're probably mad because they're probably like, that's not how you say it. It's not Werner Robbins. I don't care. Fuck you. Why would we want to make the ballot even longer and more complicated with more choices? Yes, more choice. That would be terrible. Oh god, that would be the worst. Don't do that. Why would you want choice? Oh god, it's just, that's a terrible idea. Let's only do Truman Show level shit and just cookie cutter everything and copy paste it every fucking year. Now, see, that's the way to do it. Ranked choice voting ignores most voters' rankings, so it can eliminate a candidate who is actually preferred overall. Again, this argument, I don't understand how they think that makes sense to make that argument. Ranked choice voting, it's in its fucking name. And they're like, well, it actually ignores the rankings, and it eliminates the candidates that are actually preferred. Is that really true? No. If they were truly the preferred candidate, they would win ranked choice voting too. That's literally the point of ranked choice voting, is to see really, genuinely, truly, what the voters, in this case, in the state of Oregon, actually support or actually want. The people they actually like and or would vote for. That's the literal point. So this argument is from Sarah Wolk is absolute horseshit. That makes it literally is the antithesis of logic. It is so insane. Oregon Associated County Clerk says ranked choice voting makes for a more complicated primary. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, but okay. Reconciling ranked choice voting between multiple counties is complicated and will remove final tallying from county election officials. Okay, so they're mad. This is them telling on themselves. They're trying to stuff it in the middle so that you don't pay attention to that. They're actually trying to make everything else more important. That's why they put that in the end of the sentence in the middle, because they don't want us to focus on that. Because it's actually them tattling on themselves, saying, actually, it's really because we want full control over our constituents here in our county's ballots. We don't want you to get your grubby hands on them. We want control over them. And yeah, you're a county clerk. That's part of your job description. So I can sort of understand it, but it's really stupid. That just your ego that's saying, well, no, absolutely not. It'll also apparently be very expensive. Rochelle Long is the Klamath County clerk. We receive lots of complaints about it taking so long to get results. This will delay the results further. And we feel like we're going to get complaints on transparency because we aren't the final tally that goes forward. That's why with these kinds of things, or anything related to voting, even if you didn't pass anything to change the way we vote, that still needs to be implemented as a truly wholly independent, like citizen ran uh transparency council. That's just, they don't involve their politics or their personal stances on anything at all. They just go and they just tally and they count and they look and they oversee, so that way they can guarantee that the numbers are actually correct and they're not spoofed or otherwise altered or lied about, for transparency's sake. But will that ever happen? Probably not. But I do like this one, the Oregonian editorial board. I do actually like this. See, this is, if you're going to make an argument against it, I think this is the right one to make, is that basically just wait and hold off, push it out to the further future so you can actually see what, like how it currently is going to function at the Multnomah County level, at the city level in Portland, and then Polk County as well. Just see how it works, see how it develops. That way you can have a more localized, smaller scale level to look at before leveling it up to this full state level. I think that that's a good argument to make out of its favor, of saying basically, no, they're not actually against it so much as they're just basically saying use discretion, use your intelligence and your rationality, instead of just jumping on that. Maybe wait and see, like just observe the examples we already have right here at home in the first place over the next few years, see how that goes. And if we still like the idea of it and it seems like it's going to work, then go for it. Plus, also, I could add that, and they might have already say this in this paragraph, I'm not going to read the whole thing, but there's also the thing that if you wait that long and you observe it, you can actually spot and see the different errors, mistakes, and corruptions that may take place in the ranked choice voting of Multnomah County, the city of Portland, and Polk County at this local level. It's basically like a perfect little localized case study. It's actually really, really good for that. And then when you push it out to, say, maybe 4 years out in the future, who knows how long, to observe these and really gather that data and that information, that input, that observation, and say, okay, so here's some corruption points, here's loopholes, here's some mistakes made, here's things that are functional but definitely could be improved, and this is how we can improve this. So yeah, I could see, like, you could add that to this argument of just simply waiting to see how it functions and how it's going to work. I actually like that. If you're going to argue against it, this is the right way to do it. Not just say like, oh, well, it's going to ignore everything and it's going to be a bad thing. Oh, God. Nah, I like that kind of idea. Holding off and observing is always a smart thing to do. Oregon Measure 116, Independent Public Service Compensation Commission Amendment. I still don't know what the heck that is, but we'll see. So yes, would support this constitutional amendment to establish the commission to determine certain public officials' salaries. Is it literally just okay? So oh right, I forgot that compensation is another. There's multiple meanings to it, and that's one of the meanings to it. This is payment. I forgot compensation also applies to pay. The amendment created the commission to set salaries for the governor, secretary of state, state treasurer, attorney general, bureau of labor, industrials commissioner, Supreme Court judges, and other judges governed by the Oregon Judicial Department, district attorneys, state senators, and state representatives. The amendment authorizes the commission to establish different classes of salaries for officials holding positions within the state offices. The amendment would authorize the Oregon state legislature to pass laws to establish the number of members and establish classes of individuals ineligible from being a member of the commission. The amendment would prohibit the following from serving on the commission: an officer or employee of the state, makes sense; a individual required to register with any state agency as a lobbyist, also makes perfect sense. That's very imperative. And the immediate family member of an individual described in the first two bullet points. I think one of the other things that should be applied here is cannot be a beneficiary or a member of a corporation or company, because it's guaranteed at that point that fucker is going to absolutely be a little deceitful little snake and try to bend it to their will, being like, well, actually, I think maybe if we bump this person's salary up, I could benefit. It's like, yeah, of course. So then you're just doubling down on the corruption that this country runs on, which is that corporations buy presidents, governors, and everyone else that's political into office. It's not your vote. In reality, it's the big richest of the rich in all their stupid fucking corporations. And it's never been any of us. That's formality. That's for show. To make you think that's how it works, but it isn't. Okay, so ballot summary says, under current law, the salaries paid by the state to many public officials are set by statute and can be changed only through legislation. This measure authorizes establishment of a body named we already been through this many times, to determine salaries paid by the state to the governor, the Secretary of State, and all the other ones we've already read through. Determinations of the commission would not be subject to review or modification by legislative assembly, which is probably good, because then that means that, of course, the legislators, who are literally some of these people, would be actually the real ones determining their own wages and salaries, which obviously they're going to be biased to themselves, and they're going to give themselves the biggest salary they can get. The governor or any other official. Good. The measure provides that the membership of the commission is to be established by law, except that the following classes of individuals are ineligible, which we've already shown. The measure provides that money sufficient to pay for the commission's salary determinations are automatically appropriated from the general fund without the need for further appropriation by law. Constitutional changes. This ballot measure would add a Section 2 to Article 13 of the Oregon Constitution. The following underlined text would be added. 1. The Independent Public Service Compensation Commission is to be established in a manner provided by law. 3. The Legislative Assembly may, by law, establish classes of individuals ineligible for membership on the commission, in addition to those specified in subsection 2 of this section. 4A. Once established, the commission shall determine the amounts of the salaries to be paid to the officials specified in subsection 5 of this section, notwithstanding section 29. Oh, there's a lot. Article 4 in section 1. Article 7, amended, of this Constitution. They didn't have an and in there. They should have. Oh, and section 1, article. Oh, I see. Okay. The determinations of the commission constitute the salaries to be paid by the state to specified officials. 4B. The commission shall make its determinations before January 30th of each odd-numbered year to be effective for the biennium beginning July 1st of that year. The commission, this is 5, sorry. The commission shall establish salaries for the following officials. A, governor. B, secretary of state. C, state treasurer. D, AG. E, commissioner of the Bureau of Labor and Industries or any successor agency. F, judges of the Supreme Court. G, judges of other courts under the administration of the judicial branch of the state government, which is all county and I believe municipal judges. H, state senator. I, state representative. And J, district attorneys, DAs. DeAndre Aytons. Oh, my bad. 6, the commission may establish different salaries for different classes of officials within the categories described in paragraphs F to J of subsection 5 of this section. 7, the compensation of a judge shall not be diminished during the term for which the judge is elected. 8, upon the commission's adoption of its determinations, monies sufficient to pay the salaries determined by the commission are deemed to be appropriated from the general fund for the biennium in which the determinations are effective, notwithstanding section 4, article 9 of this Constitution. 9, nothing in this section creates or requires the creation of any state office, which the commission, I guess, isn't a state. I guess it isn't considered a state office. It's considered independent because it wouldn't have anything to do with the state, but it's about the state. And it's technically being created by the state. So That seems a little bit fishy, but okay. Chief Justice Megan Flynn, the Democratic Party of Oregon. And there's a singular apparent opposition. This sounds like political speak myself, yourself there, dude. Arguments being made that an independent commission needed so that experts will decide on salaries because the legislature isn't qualified to do so. This is nothing but political speak. The legislature spends hundreds of billions of dollars in tax money. If they aren't qualified to set their own salaries, how can they be qualified to spend far larger quantities of tax money? Don't let the legislators behind a commission to raise. Don't let the legislators behind a commission to raise their own salaries. That's not how you sentence. The legislature will almost certainly be involved in choosing the commission and setting its members' salary. Probably, yeah. I mean, that's what it basically said, is that the legislature is going to still pick and then also set the salary of, and they can also choose to add people that are exempt from being able to be a part of the commission, which means that they still have a decent amount of control over their own salary via this commission, because they have a very decent amount of control over the commission, which therefore kind of makes it redundant, doesn't it? So in that essence, I understand the basis, I think, of where he's coming from, which is what I just said, but that does make some sense. But at the same time, though I do have questions about it, and it does seem a little shaky, I'm like, it would be good to be able to reduce their salaries rather than keeping them the same or increasing them. The amount of fucking corruption that the state has, especially when it comes down to money. We don't know where 90% of our fucking money goes that we pay in taxes and tolls and well, we are going to pay in tolls and obviously in permits. We really have no way to know. The state claims they don't know where it goes. And it's like, of course you don't. You never do. Throughout the entire state's history, for the record, since 1859, the state has always had a massive budget deficit, except under one single governor. And that governor was John Kitzhaber. Every single time he was governor, the state had a $3.6 billion surplus. $1 billion surplus. And that's with an undiversified economy for the most part. Yeah, it diversified way beyond what it was, say, in the 90s, but it's still, even now, is kind of not that diverse. It's still very heavily reliant on logging industry, related industries and shit like that. But under him, it always ran a multi-billion dollar, over $3 billion surplus. Every single other time in modern history, since about 2000, this state has averaged between 3.6 and $6 billion deficits under every single other governor. And just like with the federal government with 9/11, they're like, oh, we don't know where it went. We're totally looking for it, though. And they never find where it goes because they aren't actually looking, because they're the ones who are, of course, dishing out that monetary corruption. It's great to live in this state, isn't it? It's fucking amazing. So, Oregon Ballot Measure 115 is the Impeachment of Elected State Executives Amendment. It supports the constitutional amendment to allow the Oregon State Legislature to impeach and remove elected state executives, including the governor, secretary of state, attorney general, treasurer, and commission of labor and industries. So, in other words, instead of the usual way, which is that the voters here in Oregon, or in any other state that it would be, get to vote to impeach them, it would give it almost a more federal touch, because the federal government, I believe the legislature can also impeach a president, not just voters. So, to be fair, that's what this sounds like. But again, I mean, it's a little dangerous to allow political figures to do the impeaching, because they could do it just out of political bias and or funding, and that's just like a terrible idea for that reason. So honestly, this is probably not a great idea. I can see arguments in favor and against it, of course, but I don't know. It seems wishy-washy to me, like probably a bad idea. What would it change? The amendment would add a new section to the Constitution to allow the legislature to impeach and remove the elected state officials, or executives, I should say, the ones we already listed. The constitutional amendment would require 2/3 vote in the House to impeach an elected state executive, and 2/3 of a vote in the Senate to convict and remove the official from office. The House could initiate an impeachment for malfeasance or corrupt conduct in office, willful neglect of statutory or constitutional duty, or other felony or high crime. Currently, Oregon is the only state where the state legislature does not have that power. Interesting. Really interesting. That is extremely interesting. Huh. Ballot summary. It amends the Constitution to grant the Oregon House of Representatives the power to impeach statewide elected officials in the executive branch, and to grant the Oregon Senate the power to try an impeachment received from the House. Currently, the statewide elected officials of the executive branch are the governor, state secretary of state, state treasurer, the AG, and the commissioner of the Bureau of Labor and Industry. At present, the only way to remove these officials is through recall action. The measure permits the House to impeach for malfeasance, corrupt conduct in office, willful neglect of constitutional duty, or other felony or high crime. So it requires yes vote of at least 2/3 majority of representatives, so 40, to send impeachment resolution to the Senate. And then it requires the Senate to conduct impeachment trial and requires a yes vote of at least 2/3, so 20, of the senators to convict. The Chief Justice of the Oregon Supreme Court would preside over an impeachment trial. The convicted official is removed from office and disqualified from other public office. Constitutional changes. 1. The House of Representatives shall have power, I think I slurred majorly there, shall have the power of impeachment of statewide elected officials of the executive branch for malfeasance, shit we already read. Deliver resolution of impeachment to the Senate only upon the concurrence of at least 2/3 of all representatives. 2. The Senate shall have the power to try any impeachment from the House of Representatives when sitting for the purpose of trying an impeachment. The Chief Justice of the Supreme Court shall preside, and senators shall swear to affirm to do justice according to the law and evidence. A person may not be convicted under this section without the concurrence of at least 2/3 of all senators. 3. Judgment shall extend to removal from office and disqualification from holding any other public office in the state. Any person convicted or acquitted under this section remains subject to any criminal prosecution or civil liability according to the law. 4. Section 10A of this article may be invoked for the purpose of exercising the power of impeachment under this section. And of course, go figure. I think, is it literally every single one? Every single fucking state representative. Who would have thought, huh? Is supportive of it. Oh, of course, because it benefits them. It gives them more power. So, of course, they're going to be like, yeah, absolutely. I love this. I'm going to back it. Unanimous fucking representative support. That is so dumb, dude. That is actually fucking insane. And, of course, you got 3 senators. That's fucking hilarious, dude. And Noah Robinson, once again, is the only argument against it. Our statewide officials are elected directly by the voters. Yes. The current system of requiring the voters to decide on a recall is better. Voters elect them, and the voters should remove them. I agree with that. This is something I wholeheartedly agree with. I understand the argument for it, but I sincerely believe that this case, this Noah Robinson guy, is dead accurate. He's absolutely correct. There you go. Those are all but the cannabis-related ballot measures here in Oregon. All you have to do is go to, as you can see, ballotpedia.org/Oregon measure, and then enter any of the ballot measures we have on right now. That's the simplest way you can get to this website and read through everything yourself. So if there's certain ones that you would rather just read for yourself, or you want to read through for yourself again, despite the fact that we kind of read through, even if we skimmed it technically, each of these here today in this video, go for it. It's right there for you. Just thought it was worthwhile to do this because, as I stated in the beginning, I haven't heard a fucking word about anything but 118. In fact, actually, as far as I understand, sure, support, but does support mean that it's considered sponsored? No, I don't believe so. I'm pretty sure Sponsor means it's one of the people who co-wrote it and put it forward, proposed it. So in that case, even Ballotpedia here is not telling us who the heck the unless I've somehow missed it on every single one of these, who the people are that wrote it, let alone that posed it. So in other words, that sponsor it. There's no information here about that. And I'm curious as to who the heck did it. None of these have anything like that. So that's always an important thing to see too, is like, where's the transparency in that of like, who is it that co-wrote this and who is it that's sponsoring it? You know, these are questions that still sit here on every single one of these ballot measures because they don't tell us. Why don't they want us to know who's the ones who wrote it and who's the ones who sponsor it? No matter which bond measure or ballot measure it is. You should be able to understand how that's fishy and not trustworthy. There's a lack of transparency there. And the reason why it should disturb you a little bit is like, this is a problem because no, there's no transparency here. Why won't you tell us who it is behind this? But also the lack of actual talking about it, advertising, or going into detail about what the actual text of something says is a problem. That's just not acceptable. So there's that transparency and the extra detail that's missing that needs to be there. And that's just, again, another case of what you can learn about how the state operates when it comes down to elections or policies or anything. Like, there's always a lack of transparency. There's always a lack of detail. They do not like to explain things. They do not like to give you the details. They don't even link. They never fucking offer the link to the state government's website and the actual legislative texts that you're voting on. They just don't give it to us. They don't give us any details. They don't give us who wrote them, who sponsored them almost ever. That's a major problem that's got to be fixed. And that's, again, what caused me to decide I want to do this. I feel the need to do it because we deserve to know what this is really about, each of these, what's really going on, and the other ones that we aren't being told about. Like, the only ones we see advertised and told about, at least in my experience, and it seems like in most people's experience, is 118. So you also need to question, why is it that they only want to emphasize that and not any of the other ones? Because that seems sketchy too. I'm just saying. That said, I hope you guys stay safe out there and don't be a mature, impulsive, emotionally reactive child just because it's political season. Come on, grow up. Doesn't matter if you have the strongest disagreements. It's totally fine. You should be able to get along with each other because that's what mature, rational adults do. Anyway, I'm gonna go fuck myself and get hit by a fucking freight train. If you'll excuse me, it's very important.